Bonjour et bienvenue dans cette mini-lecture pour Français 112, les questions. First and foremost, you should download your worksheet, right? That's available on Blackboard for you. You can print it or have it open as a Word document. Use it to follow this video along. It will help you and will be really, really useful for you when you take the quiz on Blackboard before your live session this week. On commence. So there are three ways to ask questions in French. The first one being intonation and the last one being inversion, going from the least formal, most familiar, to the most formal. First, a very familiar way to ask a question, meaning it's not polite, it's not rude, it's just you use it if you're speaking and you know the person really well. You would ask a familiar intonation question. A second form would be the est-ce que question form, which is standard. It's neither formal nor informal. It's not that polite. It's just very normal, very standard. And the intonation question form, which is inversion, and that's very polite. We use it most often in writing, but sometimes you can hear it spoken as well when you want to be polite, when you're talking to people that you don't know, or that you want to be polite with. Intonation. Tu aimes la philosophie? Est-ce que tu aimes la philosophie? Inversion. Aimes-tu la philosophie? So start by looking at these three examples. You can write them in your worksheet. You can write a different example in your worksheet if you want. But take a look at those three question forms and what are their similarities, what are their differences. If we start with intonation, it's the easiest because the sentence doesn't change. You just let your voice rise at the end. Tu aimes la philosophie? You hear how my voice is rising? Tu aimes la philosophie? Do you like philosophy? Tu aimes la philosophie? Non, pas vraiment, c'est assez difficile. The voice drops at the end of a sentence. Tu révises beaucoup pour le cours de philo? Voice rises. Oui, je révise pas mal. Voice drops. So it's just a matter of intonation. French is not a language that has a lot of tones or intonation, but this is one of the few for intonation questions. Tu aimes la philosophie? For instance. Est-ce que questions are also fairly simple. You have your declarative sentence and you just add est-ce que at the beginning. Tu aimes la philosophie, intonation, would become est-ce que tu aimes la philosophie? That's it. You just add est-ce que. Est-ce que tu aimes la philosophie? Attention à l'élision. And this is also in your worksheet here. Que would become Q-U apostrophe before a vowel sound, right? You see this every week this semester. Élision. Est-ce qu'elle, attention à la prononciation, est-ce qu'elle est française? Est-ce qu'elle est française? It's simply much easier to say that way with the élision. Est-ce qu'elle est française? And now we go on to inversion. If you look in your worksheet here, you can see that inversion is roughly half of this video. It's more complex, more formal, more polite, a little more complex. Let's take a look. It's called inversion because you invert the subject and the verb. And you link the two with a hyphen. Don't forget that punctuation mark. It's important. You actually already know inverted questions because you've learned them so far in Unit 1 and 2. Comment allez-vous? That's an inversion. How are you? Comment vous appelez-vous? What's your name? Quel âge as-tu? How old are you? Quelle heure est-il? What time is it? All of those are already inversions, so you already know those. You've already been using them quite a lot. When you want to make an inverted question form, you have to invert the subject and the verb. So first you have to be able to recognize the subject in a sentence and the verb in a sentence, and then you just invert the word order. Tu parles espagnol would become parles-tu espagnol. Vous habitez à Staten Island? Habitez-vous à Staten Island? Nous avons cours aujourd'hui? Avons-nous cours aujourd'hui? So you see how the word order is inverted, it's reversed. Instead of going subject-verb, it goes verb-subject. So far, so good. There is one rule, one exception here. Addition of T in third person singular. This is important. When you have a question for he or she, you have to add a T between the verb and the subject. So if you look at these examples here, you see arrive-t-il, arrive-t-elle, travaille-t-il, révise-t-elle, a-t-il, a-t-elle. This is simply for pronunciation's sake. It's much easier to say a-t-il than it is to say a-il for French speakers. So when the verb ends with a vowel and the pronoun starts with a vowel, which is really only for il or elle, he or she, that's when you're going to add a T. It's useful to remember for the verb avoir, for instance, a-t-il, a-t-elle. Does he have, does she have? Make sure you make a note of this in your worksheet, in your notes. Practice. As always, I suggest you pause the video and write inversion questions for each answer below. So you're looking for the question before that answer was given, right? So careful with the logic, careful with the context. If the answer is I, the question is probably going to be you. Pause the video to do this exercise and then we'll correct together. Thank you for pausing. Here we go. Check your answers. I do want to point out for question number 3, answer number 3, le cours de français est-il difficile? That is an exception in French when you have a question where the subject is a noun, here le cours de français. The corresponding subject pronoun, il, elle, il au pluriel or elle au pluriel, is going to be added for inversion with the verb. For now, just learn that example by heart. You'll learn this as you practice, but if you want to ask, is French class difficult? You have to ask it in this way. Le cours de français est-il difficile? As always, know where you stand, know whether you need more practice, or whether you're ready to take the quiz on Blackboard. Again, use the worksheet, very helpful for the quiz. Merci beaucoup. Au revoir.